Aloha mai kākou from Waimea on the island of Hawaii. You're listening to Hawaiʻi Radio Hour. I'm Kobiakamu Moser, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Naka Nathaniel.
Aloha mai kākou. On today's program, we're going to be speaking with the mayor of Hawaiʻi County as we continue to look at the way that changes in D.C. are affecting us here on Hawaiʻi Island.
If you can learn how to speak their language, we'll get to the same end result. And that's just a skill that I've developed, and I need to develop.
And we will hear mele from ukulele virtuoso Jake Shimabukuro, who brought his take on the blues to the stage at Kahilu.
And we'll finish with mo'olelo from the daughter of a hokulea sailor.
News, iIke kūpuna, mele, mo'olelo, and more.
All on today's episode of the Hawaiʻi Radio Hour from Kahilu.
But first, the news. Aloha from Nani Waimea. I'm Naka Nathaniel. I'm here with my co-host, Kobiakamu Moser.
We're so glad to have you listening to us today. We hope it has been a great weekend, and I know a lot of people here in Hawaii can't wait for Friday.
Isn't that always the case? It's Aloha Friday, no
work till Monday. True, but this Friday is going to be extra special. Chief of War is premiering, and I've been seeing all the posts related to the show all over my feeds. The red carpet photos from the premiere looked incredible. I'm so excited.
They were. Those posts were incredible. Here, take a look at the photo of my cousin who was in the film.
He looks amazing dressed up in his manaola.
Yeah, he had a lot of fun there. He really went all out, just like so many others. And he made a very heartfelt post, and I asked him if he'd share it with us. Here's Kepa Barrett.
Hu ka mana pākana au, he au ho ke ia no ku'ulahu i Hawaii. Last night's world premiere of Chief of War was powerful. Mahalo nui loa to Jason Momoa and Apple TV for believing in our own mo'olelo and for featuring our Olelo Hawaii like never before. Thank you so much to Stacey Ava, Adrian Wilson, and Alessi Hardigan Oahu Casting for letting me play a small role as the background kahili bearer and warrior. As someone who's never pursued modeling, acting, or film before, it was wild to see my face on that massive screen, representing our kūpuna in the first episode. I'm grateful I can finally share some behind-the-scenes photos of my time on set 3 years ago. If you know me, then you know that my sister Leimaile and I went to Kulakaipuni, and from that Hawaiian immersion experience, we became the first 2 members of our ohana to relearn Olelo Hawaii fluently after it was nearly annihilated from our people after 2 generations of systemic oppression. It was a blessing to learn, but a blessing that we often carried alone. When we graduated from Kulakaipuni, people often asked, why would you learn Hawaiian? When are you ever going to use that? Little did we know that our olelo wouldn't just come in handy for both of our career paths in Aina education and community engagement, but it would flourish into an epic series like this. My final mahalo of this post goes to series writer Thomas Pa'asibith, who I met almost 3 years ago at the open casting call at Bishop Museum. Pa'a, mahalo for capturing the mo'olelo of our ali'i like never before. Mahalo for advocating for the type of premiere we had last night that was appropriate for a project, a people, and a time such as this. Finally, mahalo for bringing to light our Hawaiian language in a way that childhood Kepa could have never dreamed possible within his lifetime. I've never seen my inner world reflected back at me like this before, and it brings me to tears if I think too much about it. I'm praying for season 2 already. Iola ka hui, iola ka olelo Hawaii.
Mahalo to Kepa for sharing that with us. Besides looking forward to the show, I'm really looking forward to the podcast that our friend of the show, Russell Subiono, is doing for Hawaii Public Radio. The day after the episodes air, we'll be talking about it on Feathers and Fire. We can't wait for all this storytelling. Colby, on a scale of 10 to 10, how excited are you for Chief of War?
I have never been more excited for a TV show. It's such a huge moment for us as Hawaiians, Polynesians, us reclaiming our story. It's so exciting. It's a huge moment for us.
Yeah, no, it's been so much fun to see all of this excitement build up.
Totally.
You talked with people so long ago who had been participants in the show, and just knowing, how long it takes to pull together a big show like this. And now the moment is finally here.
Just a few days away. All right, mahalo for listening to the Hawaiʻi Radio Hour. We'll be back after this quick message.
The Hawaiʻi Radio Hour has been made possible with the incredibly generous kāko'o of the Richard Smart Fund.
The Richard Smart Fund supports healthcare, education, and charities in the Waimea area on Hawaiʻi Island.
To learn more, please visit hawaiicommunityfoundation.org. Welcome back to the Hawaiʻi Radio Hour.
One of the things we've been doing here on the Hawaiʻi Radio Hour is taking a closer look at how changes in DC have been affecting us here in Hawaii. On past shows, we looked at how cuts at the Job Corps, National Science Foundation, National Endowment for the Humanities, and the Department of Agriculture have all had impacts on our island.
This week, we want to take a look at how those changes are affecting our local government.
Our Hawaii Storytelling Fellows, Julian Santiago, Tati Danauer, and Mahealani DuPont got to sit down with Mayor Kimo Alameda.
Jillian and Mehea join us now. Aloha, Mehea. Can you share us what he said?
Yeah, so I started off by asking him what kinds of impacts he's tracking based on the decisions being made in DC and how that's going to impact us here on Hawaiʻi Island.
So the two departments that I think the federal government we receive a lot of funds from is both housing and transportation. And so again, we're not seeing any major impacts now, but there is talk that those decrease in funding could be a big impact. Outside of the 20 departments that we have, we're also concerned about immigration. As you know, that's been big. And so the decisions there have impacted our coffee farmers. We do have, Hawaii is built on immigration, right? I mean, most of, if you're not indigenous, or even Hawaiians who came through here, right, in a sense. So you're talking housing, we're talking transportation, we're talking immigration. Right now, I think those are the big three potential impacts.
So the mayor and his office are tracking impacts. How are DC's decisions being translated into action?
Right. I asked him to explain how these policy changes or policy decisions were impacting their operations on the ground in terms of budget and also the ability to respond proactively to these changes.
I think right now we can respond. Fortunately, most of our budget comes from our property taxes. So as far as funding, I like the fact that we don't have to rely too much on federal funding. So in that regard, I feel good about that. But the state, on the other hand, like MedQuest, funding or Medicaid, Medicare, we don't see the impact. That's another thing. We don't see the impacts now, but I think we're going to feel the impact soon. A little bit concerned about that. I'm also concerned about, there's a decrease in the National Science Foundation. I mean, 50% almost of their budget got slashed, right? So that impacts our astronomy community, which is another economic driver, that might have an economic impact. Again, we're not feeling it now, but I feel like we're going to feel it soon.
So he said he's concerned about feeling the impact soon. What are they doing to prepare?
Well, here's what he had to say when I asked him to tell us about what his local strategies look like.
Well, right now, we are looking at how significant these impacts will be. Like, for example, if you take Section 8 housing, we do believe that with the Trump administration, he's very, he changes his mind often. So, 1 week, he's talking about cutting funds here, and then the next week he's talking about restoring it. At one point, he was very, all illegal immigrants, and then at the next week he was, well, farmers and the hotel industry, we'll take it on a case by case basis. So it's hard to read the federal government right now, but we are prepared. We think that we could look at we have a housing fund that is used for housing, homelessness, that could potentially offset some of the funds that we wouldn't get, if it's true, from the federal government for our Section 8. As far as transportation, we think that we have solutions that we think can offset some of that funding as well. With healthcare, there was we talked to our governor, and he's worked it out with Dr. Oz, at the cabinet level, and I mean, he said that on how true this is, but we've been able to get $50 billion, in addition for rural health clinics, and Big Island's very rural, So, we have federally qualified health centers, we have rural health centers, and so if that is true and it'll come to pass, we'll get some of that funding to offset some of the Medicare and Medicaid and lack of funding there.
That makes me think of the conversation you had with Rich Mitsuda from the Keck Observatory to talk about how science is being impacted by decisions in D.C.
Exactly. I asked him to expand on this area more and how he's preparing and thinking about the field of science as mayor.
Yeah, so somehow we got to tie science into national security because administration is big into national security. Whenever it comes to defending our country or protecting our country, it seems like they always find funds. And so that'll be my strategy. And I know our telescopes can protect us from air attacks. If they can protect us from an asteroid, they can certainly protect us from a missile launch. And so I think our strategy should be tying somehow into national security to make this administration realize that astronomy can be a partner, and that science can be a partner with our national defense. And if we can convince the current administration of that, then I think we'll be in a better position to ask for funding.
He then said something I found interesting. He talked about having to adapt to the language of the federal government, become a sort of translator, so to speak.
This administration, let's face it, the climate change is a trigger. So instead, I use terms like extreme weather. Let's face it, equity is a trigger. So I use terms like parity. You don't want to use sea level rise. Instead, use coastal flooding. So there are trigger words that I think that if you can learn how to speak their language, we'll get to the same end result. And that's a skill that I've developed, and I need to develop.
Okay. Again, this makes me think of this story we did with Cheryl Lupe Nui from the Kohala Center, talking about how agriculture is being impacted.
I also asked him to expand on his thoughts on food security, especially with inflation and the cost of living here in Hawaii on the rise.
I think people, we don't. So for my whole thing as a leader is I don't like cause panic, right? So, if you watch the news, you can feel like it's doomsday already. But it's important for me as a leader to impart hope and to impart optimism, like things can get better. And yeah, we may have an administration that some people might be like, oh my gosh, but it is what it is. You might live in a household with parents that you don't agree with, but they're still your parents. And so you got to figure out how to get along and how to make it work. So I try to be positive, and I try to look for, the light at the end of the tunnel or some kind of agreement where we can start. I'm against extremism, and I think that's what our country has been experiencing most recently. So when I look for common ground, and the divisiveness comes from people who are locked into their viewpoint. When ultimately, at the end of the day, we all want to be in a place that's safe. We all want to make sure that we got food security. We all like make sure that our children can have an education. We all like make sure that that we can move to and from without a huge expense in gas and all. So there are so much that we have in common that I think outweighs the divisiveness. And I think as we continue to focus on that and focus on the result, then we should be fine. When it comes to economic development and protecting our aina, it seems sometimes it's at different spectrums. Because sometimes economic development means a compromise in environmental concerns. Because people not leaving Hawaii because of high level rise, sea level rise, or they're not leaving Hawaii because it's too hot. Let's face it, people leaving Hawaii because they cannot afford it, and they cannot afford it because their jobs doesn't pay enough for them to live the life that they want to live. So, so we got to focus on jobs, and that's why, and that's why I push in areas where people say, "Hey, Kimo, how come, you're Native Hawaiian? Wow, how come you for TMT?" I said, because we got to look for compromise. Because when you decommission 6 telescopes, that's jobs for 20 years, right? I get kids in the construction industry. That's electricians, that's plumbers, that's iron workers, that's haulers, that's fence people, that's cultural practitioners who got to make sure everything's pono, right? That's the endangered species guys, like everything, that's like jobs for a lot of people, right? And then, so I said, so you tell me then, how we're going to keep, because you cannot enjoy that mountain or our environment if you're not living in Hawaii. So for all kids your age, if you like living in Hawaii, we gotta make compromises, right? If not, you can be, full-on environmentalist and protect the mauna and all like that, but you can be living in Arizona, or you can be living in Vegas. And so how helpful is that? You know what I mean? How are you going to enjoy this island if you cannot be here? So I'm all about compromises. I think, and that's why I said if we can move away from extremism, find the happy balance somewhere in between, keep our people here. To me, that's why I'm in this position.
This idea of finding a happy balance in between his general optimism made me wonder if he talked at all about any benefits that he's identifying in the face of changes.
Yes, here's what he had to say about silver linings during this time.
Oh, the major silver lining is we got to learn how to be independent, free from the federal government's influence. So that's the silver lining. It's getting all of us to be less relying on another entity to survive.
I was also curious about if mayors across the Pai'aina on the other islands shared Mayor Alameda's sentiments. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think we all fall on a continuum. I think it's hard to tell because nobody wants to say that they align a little bit with President Trump because they're afraid of the backlash because we're a blue state. Like, oh, really? You like Trump? So, but there are some of, like, I look for silver linings because I'm a positive person. I can turn lemon into lemonade, because I cannot change the negative. Like, if I cannot change something, I'll just change my attitude about it, right? To me, that's how you prevent depression. So I look at what the current administration is doing, and I say, okay, we can go around that, right? We can make that better, or we can take that and maybe not pay attention too much to that and turn it around. So I think the other mayors are trying to have that same optimism, that it's not all doom and gloom, that we can do it. All administrations come with an angle. It's all pros and cons. And what I realize as mayor is that there's no real solution to problems. You just pick the problem you can live with, because every solution is a problem. There's no solution that I've developed that didn't make somebody mad. So now I realize we just pick the problems we can live with, and to me that becomes the solution.
Wow, that's interesting, Maya. Thanks. And Jillian, you asked about disaster preparedness.
Yeah, I did. I wanted to know what he thought about Hawaiʻi Island specifically. I often think about if we as an island are even prepared for an unexpected disaster.
I think our island is the most skilled in responding to disasters. The only thing that we're concerned about with the federal government's cuts is our national park. So maybe a volcanologist or two. But we got volunteer volcanologists. I mean, we got experts in the field that I feel 100% confident that if there's another eruption, on our island, whether it's Mauna Loa or Kilauea, that we can respond better than ever, because we're always learning too, right? If there's a hurricane, federal government, with FEMA, they say all disasters start local and end local. So in the past, when FEMA has come, they're more providing guidance. And in fact, in 2018, I think the best thing FEMA could have done is just get out of the way, because we know our island best, and so I don't know, federal cuts, again, I try not to worry too much about what the feds are doing. I'm more concerned about what we got to do to respond to the feds, because they're going to do what they do. Yeah, our job is to be ready for their response. Just like when you play sports. I mean, you don't worry too much about the other team. You just worry about how you're going to respond to what they throw at you. Bring it on. Yeah.
Now, I just want to pivot a little bit. I know that Hawaii has a goal to be running on 100% of clean energy by 2045. Jill, what did he say about that?
I was curious about that too, so here's what he said.
So we want to be off of fossil fuels by 2050 or 2045. Yeah. So okay, so I have a situation to share with you folks. So we have all these electric cars, right? So everybody's pushing towards that, but I'm not a big fan of it. Okay, because we don't have enough electric charging stations. So I'm a big fan of a hybrid where it charges itself. I don't know if we can completely rid ourselves from fossil fuels. I mean, that could be nice. But I'm also a realist. And this is where the climate change guys and the economic guys got to somehow find a middle ground. You know what I mean? So again, people are not leaving Hawaii because Hawaii dirty. I mean, if you ask any state, we're the most environmentally friendly state in the United States, I think. I mean, if we measure our air on our island, I think it's as good as any other. Maybe better than Virginia or some place over there. But the problem is, I think if you focus too much on that, then you're going to lose the economic side, and then people are going to leave the island. So I don't know about being 100% kind of free from fossil fuels. Like, I mean, that's cool, that's the goal, but what's the consequence? You remember, every solution has a problem. So maybe we reach 100%, but then we lose 100% of Hawaiians now, because there's a cost in everything we do. There's a cost in becoming 100% free from fossil fuels. Okay, so we go solar panels. Well, guess what? We don't even know what to do with the solar panels after 30 years. Now they become an environmental hazard. People say, oh, go geothermal. Oh, well, nobody like digging tupele, right? Because it's culturally, it doesn't fit people's cultural understandings of how we treat the aina. Okay, so we're gonna go now then. Oh, we cannot use fossil fuels. Solar panels look ugly coming on Waikoloa Road, and plus you don't know how to discard it. Oh, windmills, we don't know what to do with that after a while. It becomes an environmental issue. So we need compromise, and I'm like the mayor of compromises, you know.
Yeah.
So
That's funny that he says that every solution has a problem. Losing 100% of Hawaiians sounds like an incredibly large one.
Yeah, I caught that too, and it made me think about, honestly, the losses that Hawaiians have already been feeling. And I asked him to speak more about this from his perspective, how are Native Hawaiians being impacted, and what's being done about it.
because we're relying on the federal government for funding our Hawaiian programs. So this is why I think the Maori model for geothermal could work, right? Where Hawaiians benefit from the royalties, right? Where that mineral rights go directly to Native Hawaiians. My plan with the astronomy is, first of all, we're going to charge you rent. So the 30-meter telescope, the only guys who was paying rent. They was paying $1.5 million a year, and they wasn't even on the mountain yet. So I asked Rich Masuda, when you guys going to pay rent? Heck. What about Gemini? When you guys going to pay rent? You guys don't feel bad. You get TMT paying rent, you're not paying rent, right? What's your give back? Oh, we do jobs. No, I want financial give back. As mayor, I would ask for financial give back. You pay at least $500,000 a month, something, right? And that goes to Native Hawaiian programs, right? And then Gemini, you give me $500,000 a month. That goes to immersion programs, right? Keck, you give another $500,000. That's going to go to our universities, right? To build up our programs for Hawaiian studies. That's how you do it. But Hawaiians, you cannot have it both ways. You cannot say everything off the island and yet I still want a handout. You gotta get it yourself, and that's what I'm trying to impart. But some people are listening, some people are not.
Yeah. And so you see that, like, opportunities, like financial opportunities to support cultural preservation.
Absolutely, of course, that's the only way to do it. And unfortunately, we're a capitalistic society. So you're not socialists, so we're mostly capitalists. So money drives our economy and desires.
And profit.
And yes, can profit. I mean, all of that. And so, we don't got to be rich, but we got to at least be comfortable. So like Buddhists say, desires cause suffering. Yeah, it's true. So I try not to desire too much. Let's keep our desires to a minimum. And if we can do that, then we don't need much, actually. But, kids nowadays playing desires. You guys like this, you guys like that. All of a sudden it costs money, so
Yeah. Yeah.
desire less.
Wow. Yeah. I desire, I know.
Good, yeah. So, I mean, yeah, and then, what's the cost of protecting it, right? At what cost? Remember, every solution has a problem.
Really appreciate you guys going down and talking to the mayor. One of the things that he said, I wonder if we just can re-cue this quote. Yeah, here it is.
So for all kids your age, if you like living in Hawaii, we got to make compromises, right? If not, you can be, full-on environmentalists and, protect the mauna and all like that, but you can be living in Arizona or you can be living in Vegas. And so how helpful is that? You know what I mean? How are you going to enjoy this island if you cannot be here?
I'm wondering what you guys think about what he said.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to that point too, because I think it is really valuable for people our age. The mayor said that people aren't leaving Hawaii because it's too hot or because of sea level rise, but because so many people can't afford to be here. It's something a lot of people our age are thinking about, or at least I'm thinking about it, and I know you are too.
Yeah, I'm definitely thinking about that. And his point about desires made me think about not all desires are necessarily weighed equally. I think for us, we share this common desire to stay on this island, to stay, where we were born and raised.
It's crazy because I never really thought about leaving Hawaii until I recently graduated from college, and I'm kind of scoping out the different options out there for me at least. And it's really something you have to think about, like affordability, and seems almost impossible to be able to afford to rent or even to buy a house.
There's also this idea of desire that comes with a kuleana or a responsibility, especially for folks that are kama of this aina. We do have a kuleana to give back. And I think that, is another reason why a lot of us choose to stay. But of course, this is all compounded by this idea of making it here. Like, how are we going to make it? I think that's something that we can continue to talk about.
Yeah, I find this to be incredibly fascinating. I do think that this is something that maybe we can do a little bit more reporting on in the future.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a topic that a lot of people would want to hear about, especially from people our age, like discovering how to make it in Hawaii, how to stay home, how to be close to our ohanas. And yeah, definitely.
Okay, let's put this on the for our future plans that we'll keep on tackling this topic.
Mahalo to Jillian, Tati, and Mahia for that reporting.
The Hawaiʻi Radio Hour is supported by the Abigail Kawananakoa Foundation.
The Abigail Kawananakoa Foundation is dedicated to preserving traditional Hawaiian culture while empowering Hawaiian people. To learn more about the Abigail Kawananakoa Foundation, please visit kawananakoafoundation.org.
We will return in a moment. Welcome back to Waimea, the Hawaiʻi Radio Hour. We are grateful that you're taking time to listen to us.
If you're on the road right now, we appreciate you listening, especially if you're cruising Kuakini Highway in Kona.
And hopefully the traffic is moving smoothly. As Kahilu gets ready to announce its upcoming season, we are looking back at some of the past highlights of last season.
Last season, Kahilu was visited by one of Hawaii's most amazing musicians, the ukulele virtuoso, Jake Shimabukuro.
Jake was here last season to play selections from his new album, a blues collaboration with Mick Fleetwood of Fleetwood Mac fame.
Jake was joined by his longtime bassist, Jackson Waldorf. Here's Jake up on stage here at Kahilu.
So we're so thrilled. Jackson and I recently released our first recorded project together. And it's a blues album. It's called The Blues Experience. And we were able to put together a 4-piece band. So Jackson played electric bass. We had our friend Michael Grande play keyboards. And we had the legendary Mick Fleetwood on drums. Unbelievable. I still can't believe, this project came together. But Mick was just so generous, so gracious, so supportive, and did this project with us. We recorded everything live in his studio on Maui. And I got to tell you, man, it was just, when we talked about doing this project together, we wanted to take a blues direction, which is, something a little bit out of my comfort zone. But we wanted to take that direction because Mick was the pioneer, of blues and rock drumming. I mean, he started out as John Mayall's drummer, and then later he was a founding member of Fleetwood Mac, and early Fleetwood Mac was a blues band, and with Peter Green, and they were one of the most influential blues bands. I mean, when they would play in clubs in the UK back in the day, I mean, in the front row, like watching them play and being so inspired were guys like Eric Clapton and Jeff Beck, I mean, those were the people that they inspired. So to be able to record, some of these iconic blues songs with him was just unbelievable. So we're going to play a couple songs from the new record. we're gonna start with the first track on the album, and I can say album because we actually released it on vinyl. That's right. Vinyl is coming back. And in a couple months, we're going to be releasing the cassette tape and the 8-track. So stay tuned. But we're going to do this. You know, we were talking about Jeff Beck, and Jeff Beck was just such a huge inspiration for me. I just loved his guitar tone and just the way that he played. And so we did a song that Stevie Wonder wrote for him, and it's a song called "'Cause We've Ended as Lovers" off of his Blow by Blow record. And we actually recruited the great Sonny Landreth to also play with us on this one. So here's a song entitled "'Cause We've Ended as Lovers." Unfortunately, Mick Fleetwood couldn't make it tonight. But Jackson holds down a pretty mean groove. So here we go. You ready, Jackson? So when we got to Mick's studio, there was he had this Fender Princeton amp sitting in the corner, and I kind of caught my eye, and I was like, "Oh, is that amp working?" And he said, "Oh yeah, yeah." So I said, "Can I try plug into it?" So he said, "Yeah, go ahead." So I plugged my ukulele into that amp and just kind of turned it up a little bit. It just had the sweetest tone, you know. So I was like, "Wow, can we use this for the recording?" So we ended up using that one amplifier for the whole recording, and it was so cool because the amp just had such a, I don't know, just this very special characteristic to it that kind of gave the ukulele, you know, a different voice, and it was so inspiring. And Mick was just so great about encouraging us, you know, to be, you know, to just get out of our comfort zone, you know, and try to do something different and not play safe, you know. So because we were all in there, Jackson and I were looking at each other like, you know, we're just so scared, you know. We're like, we can't believe we're in the studio with Mick Fleetwood, and he's such a, you know, he's so, when he hits the drums, I mean, you feel it in every bone in your body. I mean, he's like so intense and so present when he plays. Like, he's playing and he's making eye contact with you, and you know, he's just kind of orchestrating the band, and it was so cool because I told people he's kind of like a really great point guard on a basketball team. You know, he just elevates everyone around him and sets you up for success.
We're excited that Jake is coming back this season. If you'd like to watch Jake's past performances on stage at Kahilu, head on over to kahilu.tv.
Support for the iʻike kūpuna and mo'olelo portions of the Hawaiʻi Radio Hour comes from Kate Bell and Tom Blackburn of the Deviants from the Norm.
Without deviation from the norm, progress is not possible.
We will return in a moment.
Aloha, welcome back to the show.
So here's today's last segment, a mo'olelo, a story shared in front of a live audience on stage here at Kahilu.
This summer, we've been watching as Hokulea continues its Moana Nui Aokea voyage around the Pacific.
The canoe has been sailing for more than 50 years, and there are many, many memories of the voyages.
Here's Kahai Sumida Tate sharing memories of one of those moments in Hokulea's history.
As a kid, being able to be on board the Hokulea, and I was 8 years old and got to be a part of the restoration. So she had sailed in 76 successfully and then was just sort of thrown somewhere and not tended to. And so they had to restore her. And I just thought it was the coolest thing to be one of the handful of kids running around the Hokulea and watching all of the crew restore her and trying to figure out what the guys are doing and with the ropes and everything. And so I lived in California with my mother. My parents were divorced, and so I got to come back for 2 months and be a part of this. And so for me, it was very special because I lived with my mother, who was white, and my father, who's Hawaiian, and I'm so connected with being Hawaiian, but I never got to do that. Be a part of the culture, learn anything. I wanted to dance hula as a kid. My sister got to dance hula, I didn't. I then danced hula for Mark Keli'i Ho'omalu in the Academy of Hawaiian Arts for 17 years. And so I was able to find that. So this was kind of this grounding point for me of really connecting with my culture. Ooh. Sorry. I think back then as a kid, and I'm not sure, I know there's some navigators in here, and I think with the Hokulea, I'm not sure that anybody knew exactly what was going to happen and how how amazing this journey was going to be and what Nainoa would do. And I know when my father left and the crew left, there were no satellite phones in those days. There were no escort boats. And so it was just like, hey, we'll get there when we get there and we'll let you guys know. And I think it really changed the trajectory of navigating and what we do, what our ancestors did, but in a safer way. So I think the hokulea stands for hope and healing of our culture and perpetuating it. At least I know it did for me. I got to be around people that were amazing in the community at the time, like Eddie Aikau. And my memories of him is every day we would gather around at lunch and he would play his guitar and sing. And there was just a lot of music and singing that happened. There was a lot of laughter. There was a lot of stress. There was a lot of arguing. Being a part of that whole process was amazing. And then when they set sail, they had the ceremony, they set sail, and there were warnings that they were going to run into this weather. And there was a lot of pressure, as Nainoa says, for them to still leave because they've had the ceremony and they need to leave. And the crew was pushing to actually delay the departure, and they left. They capsized about 4 or 5 hours into their journey. There were 40 knot gale force winds out there when they left, which then caused them to capsize. And so they were out there as an 8-year-old girl, it felt like they were out there for 6 days and 7 nights, but they were out there for 22 hours. And I remember when we got the call, we knew one crew member was missing. We didn't know who it was. And we go down there in the middle of the night, and I remember each of them are coming up the ship ladder from the boat, coming up, and one at a time you can hear family members being relieved and sighs. And going back, I know they were out there for 22 hours and the decision was made for Eddie to go. He had brought his surfboard, and so he had taken off on the surfboard with the leash attached to him. And the crew really thought that he was the one that got help. And it turned out to be a Hawaiian Airlines pilot that saw them as they were, I think, close to Lanai. So each of them are coming up, and I'm waiting to see my father come up, and he did. And I remember Nainoa coming up, and Eddie's parents were there. Everybody was there, and Eddie's parents were there, and Nainoa went over to them and said, where's Eddie? Where's Eddie? They wanted to thank him. And as a mother now, I can still hear his mother's voice and the wail that came deep from her na'au, that she knew her son was gone. And the devastation in the crew, as an 8-year-old girl, you could feel it from all of them. And of them not knowing what to do, how to act, but then wanting to take action. And boats went out looking for him for, I don't remember for how long. But it was Eddie's mom that called it and just said, he's gone, and let's just keep moving forward. I remember the crew still trying to go out and look for them. None of them had shaved for weeks after that. I'd never seen my dad with this full beard. And I know my father to this day actually believes that Eddie got off of his board and is just living somewhere in a quiet, reclusive life, away from the limelight. And I think it's a beautiful thought to have, that he is still out there in the world somewhere. I remember being at his funeral, and I was in his room, and up above in the ceiling, there were 3 layers of like surfboards. And so on his ceiling were just probably 30 to 40 different surfboards up there, 3 layers deep. And I just remember laying there, just looking up at them, thinking, wow, that is so cool. I think that what Nainoa has done and the Makali'i has just been this amazing journey of bringing back the Hawaiian culture of our ancestors, and watching them sail around the world has just been this amazing journey after this massive devastation and loss. And the canoe came back, Hokulea came back upside down. And I think this is a huge learning experience for all of us in having safer protocols when we're out there sailing. And in 2011, I got to be a part of the hula halau that got to greet the voyagers that came from Cook Islands, Tahiti, all over the world. And so I think it was 7 or 9 canoes came together, and they sailed from New Zealand all the way up to San Francisco. They came here, and then they went back down the coast. And it was, it's just such an amazing process to watch how this has actually revitalized so many different cultures, and that people are now sailing the old ways, but much safer. So I want to, mine's much quicker than this. I want to share what my dad wrote in 1978 about the journey, and this is in the scrapbook that he wrote to me. So he said, "To Kahai, the hokulea is important and loved by all Hawaiians because it's a symbol of dignity and a learning experience of our culture, almost lost. Sailing on her gives you a deep respect for oneself and others, which is very important in life. We will sail again and again, and someday you will sail her too. Alohe pumikana, Dad." I've never sailed her, but I'm paddling around the Makali'i 4 days a week, which is quite the honor. And I think that's just a little bit of foreshadowing, is that she has sailed over and over again, and other vessels have sailed over and over again. I'm Kahai Simini Tate, and I live in Waikoloa, originally from Oahu.
Kahai was a storyteller here, and we plan to hear more stories from our island home recorded on stage in front of a live audience at Kahilu.
In fact, we're going to be up on stage on Sunday, August 17th, when Kahilu Theater hosts its open house.
We'll be on stage at 3 p.m. sharing stories from our island home. For more details, please visit kahilu.org.
The Hawaiʻi Radio Hour is grateful for the Stupski Foundation support of the Hawaiʻi Storytellers Fellowship.
The Stupski Foundation is a private foundation returning its assets to the communities it calls home in Hawaii and the San Francisco Bay Area.
To support just and resilient health, food, and higher education systems, the foundation partners with community leaders who are building a more equitable future for all, because change can't wait.
We will return in a moment. Be sure to follow us on social media at Hawaiʻi Radio Hour. Look for us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook.
There you can find videos of our storytellers up on stage and all of our past episodes.
And if you'd like to re-listen to the show, or maybe share it with a friend or some of your ohana, you can also find us by searching for Hawaiʻi Radio Hour on Spotify and other podcast outlets. Mahalo for listening. We want to mahalo everyone who made this show possible. Mayor Kimo Alameda, Jake Shimabukuro, and Kahai Sumida Tate for getting in front of the microphone. Behind the scenes, we want to mahalo the team at Kahilu. There are plenty of great events on the calendar this summer at Kahilu, and you can find them at kahilu.org.
Of course, a very special mahalo to our Hawaii Storytellers Fellows, Julian Santiago, Mahelalani DuPont, and Tati Dunhauer for their help producing this week's shows.
And if you're away from the islands but don't want to miss out on the performances at Kahilu, you can always find shows on kahilu.tv. You can stream Jake Shimabukuro and go to kahilu.tv.
We're also very interested in hearing from you. You can send us an email or voice memo to aloha@hawaiiradiohour.com. Again, that's aloha@hawaiiradiohour.com.
Here on the show, we say e ho'olohe I ko kako moku. Listen to our island home.
Yes, e ho'olohe I ko kako moku.
A hui hou
and aloha.